Hey everybody, this is going to be a tier list for neutral items in 7.32c. Something people have been asking me for because you guys probably want to know what item you'd like to take for free, given that every game you have a choice between 5. So let's go ahead and get started, and let's lead off with the criteria I have for setting the tiers. This video is brought to you by Dota Plus, an app that gives you the advantage when it comes to picking just the right heroes and knowing exactly what your opponents want to pick when you load into a pub. One of my favorite things to do with the app is to load into spectator matches and see all types of scouting reports that I can get of the top tier players. Now that we've loaded into a game, we get this amazing overlay with all types of information. And the tool I've recently been using is to help me answer the question, was that the best hero that this team could have picked? What is this lineup perhaps lacking? So you can see that it suggests picks for the Radiant lineup in the carry role, in the mid role, in the offlane role, as well as all lanes in general. And we know 7.32c is a heavily based summons meta, and we see that the Radiant lineup doesn't have any summons heroes. So sometimes it's as simple as, please pick an aura building offlaner and this lineup will be more well-rounded. And this is just yet another tool to help you guys get better at drafting and picking the right heroes. Don't hesitate to click the link in the description below and download Dota Plus today. Now let's get back to the video.
Banana slam jam.
So Shovel, the fact that the dig alone is like regen in the early to mid game, ever since they removed the chipped vest, having the salves and the mangoes, and even the occasional bounty rune, I would say that this is A tier. Just because it's good for cores if there's nothing better, so it's kind of like you still take it, and almost any game a support would always want it. And the fact that you can still hand the salves off to people makes it super valuable because they can use the salve for full value. Arcane Ring. I would also put this in A tier. I would say Arcane Ring is good on int cores. It's good on carries that need mana to farm that haven't bought Basilia. And it's even good on supports like Tiny and Earthshaker who are looking to rush bigger items like Blink Dagger because it lets you skip mana regen items on non-int heroes, and it just buffs you up even a little bit more because of the damage that comes from the int on intelligence heroes. Possess Mask. I would actually put Possess Mask as a B tier item, and that is because it is incredibly good on carries, and that's about it. And sometimes your carry hero just doesn't really use Possess Mask all that often. So what I will say about Possess Mask is on certain heroes, it's like S tier. Like any stat-based jungler, it's S tier. But if you don't have one of those, I've even seen it where somebody's like, do I really have to take this Possess Mask as a support for 7 int and some lifesteal? So that's why I would put Possess Mask at B tier. Fairy's Trinket is absolute S tier. I can't think of a situation where I haven't had at least 2 or 3 people who want this item. Every single time I'm a hero that would like this item, there's usually a hero like I'm the offlane Primal Beast and I'm a strength hero, but the mana cost reduction and spell damage is absolutely incredible, but my mid Zeus wants it. I feel like this item is just way too strong because it's basically the old Null Talisman, and that old Null Talisman got removed for a reason, right? Pigpole. I put this at a solid B. It's just a nice stat item, and it doesn't hurt to have the active in order to get away sometimes. But 6 all attributes, there's really nothing that could ever be bad about that. So it's kind of different between Possess Mask, where I would put Possess Mask at B because it's sometimes S, sometimes D, while Pigpole is just a consistent B tier. Tumbler's Toy. You know, I'm realizing that I'm rating all of these tier 1 neutral items pretty highly. I think these are well balanced. I feel like most games I'm pretty content taking any of these items. I would say that Tumbler's Toy is also A tier. Like, Tumbler's Toy is absolutely bonkers on any hero that could use an early blink, and it can make that much of a difference. Where you get that extra little positioning to get over a cliff, to close the gap if you're like a mid-tiny or supporter shaker. Even like offlaners like Enigma who just barely need to get in position or barely need to get away. It's just the perfect neutral item in that circumstance, and there's just always at least one hero that wants it pretty badly. I would put the Seeds of Serenity as a D tier. Yes, it's nice that it gives a tango on the ground. I feel like this is like, hey, 5 position. Here you go, you know? And they're like, oh, okay, I guess I get to give my cores a tango for free. I'd say it's just very mediocre. It replaced Chip Vest, and I think Chip Vest was just way better. Lance of Pursuit, I would put at C tier because there's certain heroes like Pango, for instance, that have it proc on their attacks, similar to Ember Spirit. Even a hero like that normally would buy Orb of Venom, like Ursa, Lifestealer, it's quite good on these heroes. It's like S tier on like Pango Ember, and it's like A tier on like Lifestealer Ursa. But if those heroes aren't on your team, this item is like 200 mana. Occult Bracelet, I'd put it at S tier. It's 2.5 mana regen for pretty much every hero in the game. Pretty much every core dreams of having 2.5 mana regen for free. Ignore everything else about it, meaning the 3 all attributes, but pretty much most of the time you're getting attacked by creeps. It's especially good on heroes that want to jungle or play in the middle of the lane. This early on in the game, it's just way too strong. Broom Handle, I'd put this at B for Broom. I think Broom Handle, it's nice stats, 8 damage, 4 armor, decent attack range on certain heroes. But I would say a lot of times you just don't have a great Broom Handle carrier, and it ends up even being like a ranged hero for some armor. But overall, you're never like super upset to get the Broom Handle, because 8 damage and 4 armor is just pretty decent. Ring of Aquila, I would put this at C tier. I would say that most agility heroes only take this over an item like Vambrace because they're like, I have a strength hero on my team. Even though I want the Vambrace more, I'll go ahead and give the Vambrace to that guy, and I'll obligatorily take the Ring of Aquila because I am the Agi hero. So I feel like it just has to be put at a lower tier because nobody really loves the item, but it's not bad. Nether Shawl, I would say this is a B tier item. This is an item that is S tier on heroes with built-in armor like Timbersaw Tiny, and it's like S tier in games where the opponent has like Zeus Primal Beast cores where most of their damage is magic. But if you're against like any minus armor or you can't afford -2 armor, it's just like not even an item. Like you have to completely ignore it. Dragon Scale, I think this item is incredibly underrated in the sense that illusions get it. So if I'm a strength melee initiator like Axe, it's a really nice item. And if I'm an illusion hero and I want to pressure tier 2 towers, or even tier 1 towers if I'm that far behind at 17 minutes, the illusions hitting a tower for effectively 54 damage, or at least 18 damage a second, is pretty nutty. So I will give this one B tier simply because I think it's underrated, but there's definitely niche heroes that want it. Pupil's Gift, I would put this in C tier. It's 300 HP on non-strength heroes, which is not bad. I would just say nobody's ever super excited to get this item, and it's usually like the reject item, you know, it's the hand-me-down. The carry picks it up as the first tier 2 neutral, then they get something else and hands this off to their supports. Vambrace, I would put this in A tier. I would say there's always a hero in the game that wants this. I'd say it's good on all 3 intelligence, strength, and agility heroes. Nobody's upset about getting it. So I would say this is A tier because it's not like a god tier item, but it is always good. Brigand's Blade. I would also put this at A tier, but that's because 80% of games, there's some guy that this item's absolutely broken on, so it's S tier. The other 20% of games, it's D tier, because if you don't have a hard right clicker, then it's just underwhelming. But if you really think about it, it's effectively averaging to be 50 bonus damage from the passive, meaning when they're half HP, they take 50 bonus damage. So it's effectively 10 attack speed, 60 damage on average at this stage of the game. Pretty bonkers. Also works on towers. Roshan. This is an item that's so bonkers in terms of how much damage it does that if I'm playing a hero like Sniper and this item drops and I was considering what my next item would be, I will proceed to go a survivability item over a damage item because this dropped. Like, I effectively treat this as a damage item. Grove Bow, I would put this at B tier. There's heroes like Viper, Enchantress, Drow, Sniper that this item is insanely good on, and then the rest of the time it's 20 attack speed. And that's pretty much it. Pretty broken on ranged magic damage dealers though. Philosopher's Stone is S tier. Literally the best neutral item in the game. Because this item, if you guys remember watching my Midas video, it creates gold out of nothing, people. It can be pretty much any support wants it. unless they're an attack damage based support like Tusk or Hoodwink. If when in doubt, you can give it to spellcasting cores like Tinker, Leshrac. I've noticed as a core, if I'm like trying to farm a BKB around this stage and I feel like I have limited space to get it, I'll hold on to this item until I get my core item. I don't think I've ever seen a Philosopher's Stone sitting in base and nobody wants it. I would put Bullwhip at a solid C tier. The health and mana regen are quite nice. I think the active use is just a bit awkward. I see it sometimes, you know, you're whipping a teammate to make them chase or whipping an enemy to like catch up to them. But I would honestly say the best part about the active is like, you know, when you want to like raise the morale of the team and be like, hey, whip, you know, whip your teammate, you know, like, go get him, boy. You know, Dagger of Ristal, I think this is personally a way worse version of Brigand's Blade, so I would put this at C tier. I think there's some games where it's nice, but a lot of heroes that want the damage are kind of squishy, and honestly, it's awkward. It's just awkward to use. Half the people forget to use it, and like in the moment when you're going on somebody, are you really going to remember your neutral item? And you know, do you really want to cost yourself 100 HP? It's just an awkward item in general. Specialist Array is like D tier. I feel like this item is just kind of trash. I don't know. Like, it doesn't proc any items. So like if you're a ranged hero like Luna, you don't get glaives on your secondary attacks or anything like that. Eye of the Vizier, I would put this at C tier because it's a cast range item, which means it's for spellcasters, and it takes mana from you. So it's like, doesn't really feel like that great of an item. I've seen it sit in base a lot, and it just kind of counters itself. So you have to be like a caster hero without mana issues. Just too situational to be stronger than C tier. Going on to tier 3 items, we have Quickening Charm. I would put Quickening Charm at a solid B. Somebody wants it. It's a nice, feels good item. A little bit of cooldown reduction, a little bit of health regeneration, but nothing broken about it. Blast Rig, I'd put at a solid C to D tier. We'll put it at low C tier. Now let's do low C tier. It's basically 7 armor. There's games where it's like insane, you know, you're against like a PA jumping you and it makes it so they spend 2 seconds missing. But most heroes that get on top of you, Slark, Ursa, etc., they have a Dispel, and so they proc this and then they just dispel it. Paladin Sword, I would drop this all the way down to C, or I'd say low C as well, because they nerfed lifesteal on creeps. So they never buffed this item when they nerfed lifesteal on creeps. So usually this item in the past was meant as a substitute for not having lifesteal. It wasn't that great on heroes that already had lifesteal, because usually like lifesteal was already enough. Titan Sliver is a solid S tier. I would put this as an S tier item. Literally every carry in the game wants it, and sometimes other heroes want it. I don't think I've ever seen this item sit at base. Mindbreaker, I'd put it at B tier. If you have an attack-based hero, especially one with a blink like Ursa that jumps you and would love that extra 1.75 second silence, absolutely fantastic. It's amazing in those spots, especially against like elusive, annoying supports. But other than that, it's mediocre damage for a tier 3 item. Enchanted Quiver, I would put this at C tier because it's just, there's certain heroes like TA, for instance, that operate on a cooldown of ranged attacks, like Weaver TA, where like every 3 or 4 seconds, if they're attacking you, they're meld striking you, they're Geminate attacking you, and it's absolutely bonkers. But the rest of the time, you're usually using it for the True Strike on any other hero, and if there's no good Enchanted Quiver user, it just sits in base. Elven Tunic, I would actually put this at D tier. I know it seems like a decent item in theory, but if I'm a carry, I pretty much wanted the Titan Sliver over this. And I also wanted like Mindbreaker or Paladin Sword. I feel like it's just worse than these other items. Cloak of Flames, I'd say this is A tier. It's just an all-around solid item. Helps heroes that can't farm very fast in the mid to late game, where if they need like that extra item. And also it's just 10 magic resistance and 4 armor. % damage reduction in the mid to late game. Quite nice. Ceremonial Robe, I would say this item is theoretically A tier, but for the sake of this tier list, I'll put it at B tier because nobody wants it. You know, it's an item where it's like, oh, I'm helping my teammates. It's nice. It's a pretty good item, amping damage and stuns by 10%, but Psychic Headband, that's an A tier. Pretty much any spellcaster in the game. This is like the opposite of the Eye of the Vizier. Obviously a bit less cast range, but it's also giving you more intelligence to work with. And the little bit of the active to push people away from you can actually come in massive handy, so do not underestimate that. Ogre Seal Totem. I used to think this item was pretty trash, but you'd be surprised there's situations, especially as Blink Initiators. I would say for Blink Initiators, it's an A, but overall it's a B, so I'll leave it at B, but like, if you're blinking in and then you have to disengage, this is amazing. It basically just gives you exactly like a 4-staff reset. And that's about the time in the game where like offlaners will have like blink BKB. Tier 4 items. Timeless Relic. S tier. Every game you have a hero that wants it. Spell Prism. I'd say it's similar to Quickening Charm. B tier. Pretty solid, but they've nerfed it a lot over time. It used to be like 12 all stats, 6 mana regen, 20% cooldown. It's just been nerfed a lot. Aesthetic Cap, I'm putting at a nice little D tier. Might be one of the worst neutral items in the game. There's games for it, for sure, but this one's sitting in the inventory of the shop like 90% of the times that I see it dropped. Witchbane, I'd put this at C tier. The damage is worth considering the 4% of your target's max mana. The Dispel's a little awkward to use in a neutral item, especially since it costs mana, and they've buffed it to 20 attack speed for a reason. I would say it's good if the opponent has Ghost Scepters and you're dealing with them, but it's also like hard to use in the middle of a fight. Or if you're dealing with like 1 or 2 silences that kills you. The thing is, if you're trying to be offensive, I feel like I'd rather have the Penta-Edge Sword or the Ninja Gear to sneak up on people. And if I'm trying to be defensive, I'd rather have like the Flicker. Flicker, A tier. It's definitely been nerfed, but movement speed and getting rid of silences and slows, it's just way too strong. There's like always a hero that's like, man, I could really use that. Ninja Gear. I would put this at B tier because usually the agility heroes don't necessarily want it, and it ends up going on some guy that wants to initiate. So the free smoke component of it ends up being the relevant part, and that's pretty solid, but it's only for one person, so we'll leave it at B tier. I'd put Telescope at C tier. It's a really good item, but half the time people don't want to carry it. Pretty much everyone wants an item for themselves at this stage of the game, 37 minutes. So I would say it's effectively like A or B tier, but in terms of how often it's used, I'd put it at C tier. Trickster Cloak is S tier. This item is literally every game scenario. It's just a better version of Cloak of Flames, and the evasion late game, like it's relevant enough that like most people have not, if they have not bought an MKB already because of somebody on your team having evasion, it's like you just have 20% evasion for free. I really don't like this item. It also forces the opponent to buy detection. So it literally forces people to itemize against it, and it's a neutral item. So S tier, absolutely annoying. Hate it, get rid of it, change it, something. Stormcrafter, I'd put it at C tier. It's like a worser version of Flicker, but it's nice. You can use it to disjoint some spells, and that's about it. But overall, I'd say like the damage component of it's pretty underwhelming. Penta-Edge Sword, I would also put probably low B tier. It's really nice. The thing about these like carry items at this tier is like usually you'll even like strongly consider keeping Titan's Liver, but usually carries want survivability as the game gets later, just because it's better to not die than it is to kill a support a bit faster at this stage in the game. I'd put Havoc Hammer at C tier, maybe even D tier. Most strength heroes want you right next to them. So being an item that does damage based on strength, so you'd want it to be on a strength hero, but the strength hero doesn't want to push you away. I feel like this item would actually be better if it was changed as the primary attribute or if it didn't knock you back. Tier 5. Now I'm going to be honest with you guys. Disclaimer, I've seen each one of these items maybe 4 times in my entire life, because Immortal games just don't go this long very often. So you guys are going to have to acknowledge that your expertise on this might be better than mine. Force Boots. Boots replacement in general as a concept, pretty broken. I'd put these at A tier. They're a Dispel as well. Pretty, like, ignore the health regen component. I think they're still very good. Stygian Desolator, I would put it B tier because there's just hero, like you either have the right clicker that needs that extra damage, which is like God tier at this stage, or your right clicker is like a stat-based hero like Terrorblade or Drow, and they don't want it. And then who takes it? At that point, it's kind of awkward. Seer Stone, I would put this at B tier. It's like a nice item this late in the game for spellcasters, but it's not the item that drops and everyone goes, damn, that team got a Seer Stone. I'd put Mirror Shield at S tier. It's a Lincoln Sphere that reflects. At 60 minutes in the game, people have Abyssals, Sheeps, etc. I would put Apex at probably low B tier. It's bad on intelligence heroes, unless you have a stat-based agility carry who doesn't want... It's basically you have a stat-based agility carry, because most strength heroes would rather have Fallen Sky or Giant's Ring. So I feel like it's B tier because it's like pretty good, but most heroes would prefer something else. Book of the Dead, I'm putting at D tier. I feel like it's kind of a joke that it's still in the game. People hardly use it. I feel like they'll put it in their backpack and swap it in to use it and then put it back. You know, it's like 30 strength is nice and all, but 600 HP is basically what you're getting out of the item at this stage in the game. I would put Fallen Sky probably at B tier. Is a stun and a blink, but the slight delay makes it a little bit hard to land. But mobility spell, an extra one at this stage in the game, is pretty powerful. Arcanist Armor, I would put this at A tier. The active is just insanely broken against certain heroes, and then the passives alone, like 20% magic resistance and 5 armor for your teammates, that's like a defensive component of a pipe and an AC all in one. I would put Pirate Hat at C tier. At this stage in the game, attack speed is just not as powerful as all these other things that we're seeing. So half the time it's just support taking this item for the bounty rune. The bounty rune component's nice, but gold at that stage in the game is not usually nearly as relevant as it would be at any other stage. Ex Machina, even after they nerfed it to 350 mana, I would still put this at A tier. It was S tier when it didn't cost mana, but giving yourself just like double BKB, double Satanic, double Abyssal, double Sheep, only problem is you have to make sure you have mana. I feel like this item would be strong if they removed the armor component or just like made it like 5 or 10. So yeah, I think it's still way too powerful. I would put Giant's Ring at S tier. It's basically a boots replacement that gives you free pathing and 700 HP. And, you know, it also increases your EP with the model scale. Ignoring that, it's still ultra powerful. Book of Shadows. This is the item that, you know, probably the average player like reads the active and was like, what? When do I use that? I would just say this item, I'd put it at C tier because it's hard to use and the components of it, the night vision and the all attributes are kind of just mediocre, especially because at 60 minutes into the game, it's daytime. And most games I feel like do end within 5 minutes of 60 minutes because you get these items. So the night vision components, like kind of weird champ, maybe even D tier on that one. Yeah, let's move that one to D tier. So that's my tier list for neutral items for 7.32C. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you like or dislike or disagree with or agree with my assessment of these items. And hopefully this helped you pick and choose which ones you would take in your games. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace.